Hello, malt mates. Ralphie here. Whiskey Bothy, that's where we are. You're welcome. Drag up a seat. Make yourselves comfortable, and if you're having a wee dram, make sure it's a quality one. And welcome to review number 1106. Extras. Extra content, extra information, extra opinion, extra stuff. So I've got a bit of stuff for you, and it's relating to barley varieties. Specifically, a variety called Golden Promise, which has achieved a certain amount of fame in the single malt Scotch whisky world because of the wonderful, rich, syrupy flavour that it brings to a bottle of whisky. It's not just the flavour, it gives depth of flavour. It is remarkably suited to the quality and delivery of a single malt. Golden Promise is one of these now venerable old school varieties of barley. And bear in mind, barley's been around for thousands upon thousands of years. It's first mentioned back in the Sumerian texts, you know, on these little clay tablets with little thorny imprints on them, because they recorded so much stuff, most of which we never ever get to know, because it's none of our business. We'll leave that to the academics. But some of it tells us that barley was a very successful crop, and in fact it's on record that the Greeks were avid fans of the beer and the wine made from barley, and the Egyptians brewed beer from barley, and the Romans paid wages in barley and peppercorns and parsnips, and in fact anything of value that didn't actually involve hard cash. But there's records of this. You can actually see in friezes and tombs and walls and temples, when they're bringing the harvest in, what they're clearly showing is 2-row or 4-row barley. Now these are primitive strains of barley, and barley has undergone a lot of evolution over recent years as technology has allowed to make barley more productive, cheaper to grow, less prone to disease, and providing more flavour, and recently a lot more carbohydrate from the starch for giving higher yields, so that the production of barley-based whisky is cheaper. And that's the fact of it. So at the moment, two popular varieties used by the industry are Optic and Chalice. Chalice number 2. But you've got all these names. You've got Caledonia, you've got Copace, you've got Foster's, you've got loads of different names and varieties and permutations of barley going back down the ages. But I'll stop at the early 1950s, when a maltings company and barley developer by the name of Simpson was involved in basically using modern technology to create a short-stemmed, wind-resistant, high-productive barley that was comfortable growing in earth infused with salt. Now, why would that particularly matter? Well, when you look at Scotland's coastline, you're never more than 70 miles away from the sea wherever you are in Scotland. And that's the fact of it. Scotland is a small and fairly narrow country, surrounded in 3 out of 4 sides by water. And that water's not hanging around, because it's either the North Sea or the Atlantic Ocean for most of the time. And it tends to be choppy, and it tends to be quite temperamental and prone to storms. And of course, the seawater gets blown inland over coastal fields, and it deposits salt into the ground. And we see this most notably in peat that's harvested on Islay. It has that tanginess to it. Islay peat's quite distinct and different from Highland peat, which is much more nutty and softer in its influence. So salt is a an important factor in deciding where you're going to grow your barley. And if you've got a variety that's resistant, you're going to get a better result and a better yield. And if it can withstand heavy rain showers for a lot of the summer, even better. And that's where Golden Promise appeared. It was first adopted in the 1950s and the 60s by Scottish-based breweries, including Caledonia Brewery, who were using it to make beer. And in fact, one of my favourite beers when I'm drinking beer, which is not very often because it's highly calorific, is Golden Promise. It's a lovely variety of beer, and it's named after the barley. Back in the days, in the 1980s, I can remember having a barley discussion in a bar in Glasgow. And basically, the person who was interested in the barley, because his brother was a farmer and his sister worked in the maltings company, and he was driving the lorry. And when you're driving lorries, you're always clearing up the scraps of barley that have fallen down. So he had it in his pocket and he showed us. And we crunched it up and we chewed it and we got a wee cereal note. It was all very exciting to be doing in a bar when you're passing a few hours. But it was also very educational because nothing tells you more than actually your hands-on. This is why when I really started my whiskey journey, I went out in my car, found a barley field on a nice sunny summer's day, and I sat in it for an hour. I did. And I had a glass of whiskey while I was sitting in it, unpeated, of course, and I could smell the ripening barley sitting in the field, and it gave much, much more meaning to the experience of actually drinking the whiskey. Now, latterly, once the brewers were getting good results and good sales from their tasty Golden Promise barley brewed beer, Macallan latched onto this back in the day when they were actually concerned about the quality of the product. You know, times have changed. And they invested in producing what they regarded as the best quality results in Scotch single malt whisky. And, you know, they carried that reputation for quite a long time until it all went horribly pear-shaped in the last 20 years, which it has. If you happen to have tasted Macallan recently, which I have, and I was deeply, deeply disappointed. But it wasn't just Macallan who back in the day were using Golden Promise barley. Of course, they've discontinued it now for the sake of cutting costs. But Glengoyne were also quietly using Golden Promise barley because they are 100% unpeated whiskey. And they take pride in that fact. And they were actually using Golden Promise without explaining it to the customers, without ever mentioning it. And it was left to the actual workers at the distillery during a tour to actually bring it up and then suddenly discover that genuine whiskey drinkers know exactly what they're talking about and how meaningful it is to be using this variety of barley. Now, let's not be too sentimental here, by the way. We're not talking about this 100% sort of legacy thing from the Egyptians. No, not at all. Golden Promise variety barley was in fact produced genetically using high doses of gamma radiation to alter the physical makeup of the DNA. Seriously. Back in the 1950s, you know, genetic modification is nothing new. Back in the 1950s, they were doing that. And they're doing it even more so today. In fact, they've got far more sophisticated technology these days to make these things happen. And this is why you always see new variety barley varieties coming into the pipeline, which never get discussed by the distillery, because the fact is that these new barley varieties are not there to contribute more flavour. They're there to contribute more alcohol, which means less flavour, which means you get a lighter, smoother whiskey, which they believe that the passive consumer wants. And they're right. It is what the passive consumer wants. Because the younger generation and some of the older generation have absolutely no idea the extent to which their palate is adulterated by the overconsumption of very sweet stuff through the food supply, from baby rusk feed to breakfast cereal to ice cream, chocolate bars, potato salad with sugar in it, oils, seasoning oils with sugar in it, mayonnaise with sugar in it, and artificial sweeteners. Because sweetness is the most addictive of the sensations. Always has been. Sugar and fat will get you fat. Will get you fatter. It's a brilliant combination. Nobody gets fat eating lumps of lard. No. But you mix lard, or even worse, seed oils. Whip it all up with some chemical and loads of sugar into a whippy dessert. People can't get enough of it. You better know it. I'm sure you already do, because you are a smart person. That's why you're watching my videos. Back to the barley. Golden Promise is now making a bit of a resurrection, along with beer barley. Now, beer is another name for a legacy, successful style of barley that delivers flavour into whisky. And they come in tandem with organic whisky production, which tends to use the non-corporate varieties, which are heavily dependent on glyphosate and other toxic pesticides which denature the soil. That's the fact of it. Just giving an opinion. But when you look at local barley, for example, or field homegrown indigenous barley, so if the barley's grown on Islay or down at Springbank, or the organic barley provided to Knocknean, for example, what you will notice is that it's probably, if it's not Golden Promise, it's a variety it's an older style variety that's as near as. And the problems, they're not totally easy to work with. And it's something that cropped up in my last interview when I visited Springbank, was when they were milling the local barley, because it's not the big, dry, lumpy, commercial style of variety of barley that's grown in warmer climates. Local barley is cold growing barley. It's smaller grain, it's probably tougher, it's got a thicker husk, which is why it gets more peated more easily. But they have to really spend extra time drying the grain before they can, kilning the grain before they can actually mill it. And when they do, because of the higher vegetal oil content within local barley and smaller legacy grain varieties, it tends to clog up the hoppers in the mill once it's been all ground up and getting pushed through and blown through into the storage vessels. So there's a little bit about local barley. When I was starting in whisky in 1980s, right, so long ago, just like yesterday, it was irrelevant. Nobody discussed it. Not experts didn't matter. Experts were still talking about the purple heather and the deer and the pure spring water cascading down the mountainside, blah, blah, blah. And they've gone on too long about it. But the smart players in the whisky business today, they are now looking for legacy references, throwbacks to the varieties that made yesteryear's whisky so good, so appreciated and so valued. The brands from decades ago that actually gave Scotch whisky its fundamental reputation that it enjoys now. But for how much longer? Only time will tell. Tastes are changing. And the primary way they're changing, maltmates, is that people, as they get more experienced and learn much faster than ever before about Scotch whisky, people are getting damn fussy. They know how to separate the best from the rest and are invested in finding the best, buying the best, tasting it. And the best producers are answering the call for legacy barleys and guest yeast varieties and guest oaks and Ian oak, Polish oak, Slovenian oak, Romanian oak, North African oak, Asian oak, Japanese oak, Siberian oak, New Zealand oak, Antarctic oak. Well, you never know. Because oak, people are now aware that just like barley varieties contribute greatly different flavours and profiles to whisky, so does oak wood itself. So this is the way forward for Scotch whisky, along with the fact that in order to keep the proactive, invested customers happy, you've got to get rid of that chill filtration and caramel colouring. But having said that, let the corporations go their own way. To be honest, at this moment in time, we're no longer their customers, and we haven't been for quite a long time now. So we're happy to move on because it's the new distilleries that tick the boxes for us. And they've earned our loyalty. And that is why I am happy to be reviewing stuff like this and continue to do so. You will see this reflected in 2026 quite strongly. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's conversations like this that I kind of have extras of in my Patreon channel. So if you fancy treating yourself to the end of the year with a new little subscription, it's only £4 a month. You get extra content and the live streams and access to my Discord channel. So if you care, I'll see you there. But in the meantime, take your time, enjoy your malts, and keep it quality, not quantity.